All right, we are live here again, back in the co-working space. Hopefully it sounds okay and looks okay. I definitely think this whole video setup could be way better than it is, even though it's kind of like temporarily set up for this every time. But we'll get it going better in the coming weeks. But it's good to have you here. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Good to see you, William. Good afternoon from Ontario. Quite a week this week. WWDC. I also had a lot of things going on in my work and personal lives this week. So I posted that video and I still have not gotten back to all the comments on that, my video earlier this week on Apple Home. If you missed my video, you can go check that out after this live stream. But it's been a week for me, much crazier than usual. But a lot of cool stuff coming out of WWDC, and even some little details here and there for us Apple Home users and folks who like to do smart home tech and also happen to use Apple products. Speaking of Apple products, though, before we get into that, I mentioned last week the book Apple in China. And I just cannot emphasize enough, if you do anything related to, YouTube channels that cover Apple or something else, you fancy yourself some kind of pundit or creator that covers Apple in some way, or if you're just interested in the company from a business perspective, maybe you invest in them. I cannot recommend this book enough. It seems like he's done, Patrick McGee has done some phenomenal reporting, and would highly, highly recommend checking it out. I've been not had a chance to read it, but I've been listening to the audiobook. And it's a very good audiobook, and it's been great to kind of fill those times when I've been doing other things where I can listen to an audiobook the past week, like installing a new microwave at home because our microwave just suddenly broke, stuff like that. Apple in China by Patrick McGee. Very, very good book. So hopefully you can see that. Yeah, okay, cool. Everything's working. Hey, William. Thanks for joining. Good to have you here. Got some regulars here in the chat. So, so that's Apple in China. Definitely want to go check that book out if you haven't already. Physical or audio book versions. But we have new betas of the operating systems from Apple. Of course, 26 is the version number now. Thankfully, I'm very happy about that kind of stabilizing out. And I've actually been playing a bunch with iPadOS 26. I have it here on my iPad Pro, and actually this morning there were some Wi-Fi issues here at the co-working space, and so I didn't really have my usual, internet connection like Wi-Fi for my computer, so I just worked off of my iPad on 5G, and it works great. It's the multi-window stuff is surprisingly well done. Yes, there's some beta 1 visual glitches and things, and I don't recommend installing things before the public beta if you intend to use the device a lot for real work. However, as someone who wants to see the bleeding edge and, keep up with all this stuff for you guys here on YouTube, I'm very impressed with how it's all working. And I even hooked my iPad up to my external monitor here at the co-working space where I usually hook up a laptop, and I could drag windows over there and have just kind of this multi-window setup with all kinds of, a Safari window open here, and then my email open there, and Slack open there, and, get a lot of work done. Obviously, there are things as a developer, I'm not really a developer anymore, but I still do some things in Xcode. I can't do that on my iPad, but there's a lot of other stuff I can do on the iPad, and it's very, very refreshing to see Apple kind of taking a jump in software with the iPad that it hasn't been able to do for a long time. And I think people want Apple to make some like ultra thin, ultra light MacBook, and maybe they will someday. But I think, this like the iPad Pro and the 11-inch form factor is just an amazing size. It doesn't even need to be like a super new iPad, or could be iPad Air, iPad Pro, but just like that 11-inch size with the keyboard is very powerful and very portable. And I think the touch screen on an ultra portable it's just nice hardware. And we've known it's been nice hardware for a long time, but now it's starting to get the software coming this fall to really match that. So that's always exciting. And we had some other news. There's Energy Kit. So Energy Kit is basically, if you remember last year, I think it was last year, the year before, Apple added energy monitoring in the Home app. So you can go to the Home app on the, here, let me see if I can share my screen here to show you what it looks like. Here we go. So this is energy forecast, right? And this has like a forecast of the energy use of your home and when it will be on cleaner energy or maybe off-peak hours. And in other words, it's usually times that are better for the environment, but also better for your wallet, cost you less money. And so that's then basically Apple's taken the tech behind that and exposed it to any developer who wants to use it with Energy Kit. And I think that's pretty cool. The thing there, I was watching the session on this, like the developer session, and it makes sense, like all the stuff they're doing. I just don't understand the context of when a developer would really want to use it, right? Like, basically, the advantage is that theoretically, if Apple does this integration with more utility providers, I think they just have PG&E right now, which is like the Pacific Gas and Electric out in California. But if they add more utility providers, then you would be able to, like, let's say you park your electric car at home, you plug your electric car in, your phone gets a background update for your electric car app, which then queries Energy Kit in the background to realize, oh, here's the schedule of the forecast for energy use over the next period of time, and then somehow communicates that to your car about, hey, you might want to charge at these particular hours. And you would think that an electric car company would want to kind of manage some of that themselves, but I mean, if they are able to use this from Apple, maybe then it's free basically for them. So maybe that would be an advantage. I just think the whole idea of having your phone take care of that in the background or forcing you to open the phone app to manage that doesn't really seem to be as automated as I'd like. I was hoping more that we would get some things with Energy Kit, so to speak, with hooks in the Home app where you could say, run this automation if the energy forecast is green, right? So like there might be certain things you'd want to run at a particular time of day. Let's say all the fans in your home, or reverse. Like if the energy forecast is bad, you don't want your AC to work really hard to cool your house. So maybe in that case, you want to run some ceiling fans to move some of the air and take some load off the air conditioner. If the weather outside is above a certain temperature and the energy forecast is not green. And it doesn't seem like you can really do that in the Home app right now. So that's the Energy Kit thing. Like, it's exciting to see Apple working on it. I think is a good, there's good intentions behind it. It's a good thing, but I'm still confused as far as like the actual use case for it. It feels like something they probably built for this rumored car project that they scrapped, and then decided, well, we could maybe spin this off as its own thing. Because it also felt, if memory serves, it was like added kind of in one of the final betas of the summer when it came out. Like it wasn't something that was there the whole time. Maybe I'm misremembering that. But so that's Energy Kit. And then we also got Thread 1.4, version 1.4 in Apple TV tvOS 26, which is a nice improvement, hopefully, for some of the newer Thread devices you might have that might be struggling with communicating with older Thread standards. It supports better interoperability with different Thread networks and a bunch of other newer Thread features. So if you have devices on Thread 1.4, then having Apple Home on Thread 1.4 means that they're going to talk better between each other. And I mean, the interoperability means, if your Eero network has a Thread 1.4 network and your Apple TV does, and some other smart home system you have, they all, like your Nanoleaf lights have their own network or whatever, like all that stuff can more easily mesh together than it used to be able to. So that's exciting parts of that. So I'm hoping Thread 1.4 ends up being just a nice improvement for reliability of Thread in Apple Home. I find it curious that it's just on the tvOS updates. There's nothing about HomePods getting it right now. Although, depending on how you slice it, HomePods are kind of bundled in iOS, so maybe it'll kind of roll out there too. Or maybe Apple's gonna update the HomePod between now and the fall, and then that happens. But I'm not holding my breath on that. So we'll see. And then the last thing that I'm excited about is the persistent speaker connection. I'm going to be playing with this a little bit over the summer. This is with tvOS, and it allows for you to connect a speaker to your Apple TV. So let's say you have like AirPlay or other speakers, you can connect them more over a longer period of time, so after a reboot or whatever, it should retain the connection. Right now, with the current version of tvOS that's public, the only way you can do that is with HomePods or HomePod minis. So I think this could add for some interesting home audio type setups. But again, I was skeptical when I first set up HomePods as speakers that, I don't know how reliably this is going to work. But actually, in practice, I've been using it recently for a video coming out soon, and it's overall been pretty good. There's very few reliability issues with it. I think it's on par with something like a Sonos system in terms of wirelessly syncing all the audio, working really well. That said, I don't know how Apple's going to be able to do this reliably with all kinds of other AirPlay devices. We'll see how that all works out, but it certainly means that it gives you potential more creativity in creating a home audio setup where your Apple TV set-top box is still almost acting as your AV receiver, right? You plug it into your HDMI eARC port on your TV, but then you're able to connect it to more speakers. And, maybe that's a way Apple can justify the cost of a Apple TV versus another set-top box as well. It can be like your receiver for you, which I could see that, if it works, right? So we'll see how that actually pans out in the summer. But nice to see some more regular folks in the chat here. Hey, from France, Palme Kit, I think. Robert, morning from Australia. Yes, and Zane, good to see you here as well. Greetings from Virginia, Miguel. Yes, my old... where I grew up. I've installed iPadOS 26, works fine, but Apple needs to improve the readability. Yes, you're not the first person I've heard mention this, Palme Kit. I agree. And I'm sorry, I'm guessing on the name pronunciation, but the clear text liquid glass, I think is a really cool concept, but there's a concept around readability with this that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, and I think it's potentially one of the problems. Now, there's a lot of different variables here that could be causing readability issues, right? A lot of it is the content behind whatever the liquid glass is, and that causes a lot of issues. And maybe there's things Apple could do there to sort of add an outer glow around text or something in the liquid glass to add some kind of effect to make it more readable. I don't know. There's got to be something there, some trick Apple can pull. However, I think another side of this is I've noticed playing with different devices that have the beta on it. As Apple's added these nice fancy OLED displays to a lot of their newer devices, or very fancy LED, LCD displays, all of the newer displays from Apple on newer devices, generally speaking, have much deeper blacks than some of the older devices. And I think with displays that have very deep blacks, the contrast isn't as much of an issue if you're looking at black text with this liquid glass background. Again, if you have there are still some variables there where it doesn't work out quite as neatly, right? If you have a dark background with black text, that's not going to work well. But I just think that displaying the black text, perhaps there's folks within Apple, really looking at this primarily at this point on newer Apple devices who see a better contrast ratio than maybe older Apple devices with not as good of displays. So we'll see. Definitely something that I think they probably are considering or have considered already, but just something that I've noticed and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is like, I think the display technology also plays into how you feel about liquid glass, among other factors. So, hey, from Denmark, Stefan. Thanks for joining again. Good to see you here. I have not played some years I've had like the AirPods beta like inadvertently installed in my AirPods, right? If I'm using my AirPods with a beta device, somehow just like puts it on there. I have not opted into any AirPods betas, and I don't think I'm on them at least yet, so I can't say. I also have not done any of the tvOS betas yet or HomePod iOS betas, if that's even possible at this point. I'm not sure. I tend to steer clear of those for my smart home, at least right at first, unless I need to put them on for some particular feature I want to test. My one advice, if you plan to go on the tvOS beta to check out the new look and feel and features, if you have other Apple TVs or HomePods in your home that can be your primary home hub, make those your primary home hub. And also ideally turn off the smart home functionality on the Apple TV where you're putting the beta on, because then you're not going to have as many issues where otherwise your primary Matter controller will then have the beta system on it, and that might have reliability issues across your smart home. That said, though, like I just think you should avoid, if you can, doing that. And I like to, just because I'm working on new setups and new projects, testing new products for you for future videos, and I want to give those devices a fair shot, right? Like if I have a bunch of beta software from Apple running in my smart home, it might not be a very fair test of some of these devices if then they don't work reliably, and it's like, well, it was because I was using a bunch of stuff that had bugs from Apple that Apple's working on fixing because it's beta software, right? So yeah, that's why I like to keep them contained and away from my smart home, at least until later in the summer when they hopefully get more stable. The other thing to keep in mind too is as you change your primary home hub in the Home app, that changes your primary Matter controller in your home. And certain Matter devices play better with the primary Matter controller changing than others. So you might see certain devices in your home where after you make that change, you need to restart them. You need to sometimes maybe even reset them, but certainly make sure the connection of devices doesn't go unresponsive, and kind of keep an eye on that in the hour or so after you change your primary Matter controller. There can be some devices in your home that get fussy about that change. So, hey, from Canada, Tectonic. Yes, that's a clever name. And I think is Pomade Kit earlier, is that like French for home? I'm not sure. Anyways, any good news in the home architecture upgrade? Do it. The home architecture upgrade is worth it. You need it. I think there were some stories earlier about how you need to upgrade like soon. Apple's deprecating the old architecture. Upgrade. It's fine at this point. It's not going to be, you're probably signing yourself up for more issues by staying on the old architecture than you are moving to the new one. That said, like there's always, problems with Apple Home. Right now, my latest problem with Apple Home, it's not I haven't had lots of issues with Apple Home this year, but this is like the most notable one, is when I use buttons. I have lots of buttons in my home on walls and different stuff. You might have seen in some of my videos. And I found the responsiveness in 18.5, iOS 18.5, the responsiveness of those buttons is very, very delayed and slow. So it's across different, this is across buttons that connect with Zigbee via a bridge or Thread. Like it's not specific to any particular vendor, but just like using a button on the wall, I press it to trigger a scene or double press it, whatever. Then it's like waiting. Okay, now it happens. Where it used to be like hitting a light switch and then boom, you press the button and the scene turns on. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's something funky with my home. Maybe it's something like more broad, but maybe other folks have seen that can mention it in the chat. Hello from Georgia, Jeff. Great to see you here. Nothing is safe before the public betas. Yes, Sigmund. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. Been quite a week. Exciting stuff coming for Apple TV as well. I actually just booked last night my ticket to the F1 movie when it comes out here in Illinois. I was of course, not press at WWDC, getting to go to it on Tuesday night. But Apple TV is keeping Sigmund busy with lots of cool content these days. So, anyways, great to see you here. Thanks for joining. Yes. Okay. Yes. Oh, Apple Kit. Got it. Pomme is, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. But anyways, that's Apple in French. Okay. The name makes sense now. Thank you for clarifying. So cool. Yeah. So we talked about the betas. And yes, as Sigmund was saying, steer clear until the public betas. Usually that's, if you're interested in trying out the new stuff, that's a better time to try it. And unless you have like a secondary device or a device you don't use as much, you could play around with it on. But then usually it's also like something where I've found plenty of years, having done betas for many years, if you put it on that secondary device and you don't really have a plan of how you're going to use that device in your life to actually try out the betas, then it'll just sit in a drawer, and then you'll take it out of the drawer like 2 weeks later and the battery will be completely dead and you won't have used it at all. And then like, what's the point? So, it's a balance there, right? Like we're using it, but not relying on it. It's tricky. Yeah, I agree, Stefan. I would love to see Apple do something creative to make a surround sound home theater system. The thing I've talked about for a while is, you've seen Sony, and I think Ultimia and AWOL Vision as well. There have been a handful of different companies who've made these surround sound systems that are basically like 4 HomePod-sized speakers you put in the corners of the room, sometimes with the subwoofer added to that. And you could see where I would, no hardware change required, just Apple enables something in their software. Now, I shouldn't say no hardware change required. I don't know what the back-end connections with Wi-Fi would look like for this. Maybe there's not enough hardware in the current HomePods or Apple TV to support this. What I'd love to see is 4 HomePods, each in the corners of the room. So, and it would make sense where then you could, as a customer, you could buy an Apple TV. Then down the road, when you have more money, you could buy 2 HomePods for your stereo speakers. And then down the road, you have more money, you could buy 2 more HomePods to add to the setup, and then you get surround sound. And I think that kind of idea of slowly, not having to spend all the money at once, can be a really nice way to kind of bridge into a really cool setup you build over time. And then having 4 HomePods be a surround sound system. I mean, I think the speaker drivers in 4 HomePods would sound amazing. And then especially if you were able to add some kind of Apple subwoofer, whether it's a subwoofer Apple makes or some kind of AirPlay partnership they have with other subwoofer brands or something. I think that kind of setup would be really cool and really start to, I think there's plenty of people, like, I'm very impressed with the sound of 2 stereo HomePods for what they are, right? 2 stereo speakers in front of your TV. It sounds great, but I think because that's the max it does and the top of the line of the setup, a lot of people don't take that setup seriously or seriously consider it because it's just not, it's not going to give you the performance that a Sonos setup or a surround sound system from any number of companies is going to give you because you don't have speakers physically behind you. But I do think if you're looking at do you go with the stereo HomePods or not? Where I've put them, and I've seen other people put them, and I think have good success with it, is in a main living area. So I think they look like really nice speakers. And so if you have like a living room TV, or maybe you have like an open floor plan or something else where it's just like you don't really have the space to put rear firing speakers, especially properly set up rear firing speakers in a good location. Or not rear firing, right? Like speakers behind you, like rear channels from your surround sound. If you don't have a place to put those, then it doesn't matter because you're never going to get to that phase, right? And so just having these 2 nice looking HomePods connected to an Apple TV can be a nice setup for a living room. But then, of course, in another place, it might be better to consider more surround sound options. So. Oh yeah, the main issue is the lack of bandwidth to do more than 2 speakers. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'd probably see more signs of Apple working in that direction, like Sigmund's saying. So. Yeah, or just buy Sonos, Stefan. I mean, they totally could. I just don't know. I would love to see that. I think there's a lot of, you could see the parallels to Beats in terms of the acquisitions and Apple moving more into smart home tech. And I think the cultures would probably mesh pretty well. And Sonos, while doing okay, certainly could use a more stable, deep pockets behind it with a corporate backing. I don't know. I could also, but I also think that Apple, the challenge with should Apple buy Sonos is like kind of different from Beats, because I think Beats they bought for other reasons, and like the music streaming service and the kind of cultural cachet that Beats had and some of the talented people Beats had. Where I think Apple has, you look at AirPods, the speakers in my MacBook Pro, like Apple has so many great speaker designers that I think, and engineers, whatever, people who make stuff that makes sound, right? Apple has so many great people in that department that I think they would like wonder why they need Sonos for the acoustical stuff. And then the software stack has been so damaged by consumers over the years now with the new version of the Sonos app having so many issues. Overall, I think it's fine now, but certainly Sonos has had a rocky history there. And so I think then Apple would probably think like, what are they buying at that point? And I think they're certainly buying a suite of products. I think there's stuff Sonos knows around multi-room audio that Apple is not nearly as fast as Sonos in multi-room audio performance. But that said, like this morning, my kids mistakenly triggered the Sonos voice assistant to play some random hip hop song that it had thought my kids had asked for, and it was being played everywhere in my home. So I pull out my Sonos app. I'm quickly trying to stop it, and it's just like it took a good 2 seconds to go from I tap the Sonos app icon on my phone to I've stopped the music in my home, which I think is too long for that. I was just watching this loading screen happen. on the Sonos app as it like kind of synced up to my system. Now it had been a while since I opened the Sonos app on my phone. I'd been using it other places and hadn't been playing audio that morning. So maybe that explains why it took so long to load, but I was just like, the Sonos performance isn't always what I sometimes think of it as, of just like, then you press pause. But the advantage there is that I press pause and boom, the audio stopped throughout my home. So I don't know if that would happen if all my HomePods are playing the same song. I think it would probably pause in different rooms depending on how fast it got there, and it wouldn't be all instant. So when it comes to WWDC 25, William, what did you like most about it? What do you think finding the most disappointing? I think the thing I like the most about it's a great question, William. Definitely iPadOS. I'm very excited about iPadOS. I think equally up there is Spotlight on macOS, but I haven't played with the macOS Spotlight stuff as much. So I happen to be in a weird scenario right now with some machines getting traded around the family and stuff where I actually had a spare Mac, which is why you saw the Spotlight stuff. If you watch my video on WWDC, I kind of have a spare Mac right now where I could test the new Mac OS, which I don't usually have, and I won't have for long. But yeah, I think the new Spotlight and iPadOS improvements are definitely my favorite parts. I think the most disappointing for me is not necessarily a lack of Apple Home updates, but a lack of just smart home changes in general. I would have loved to see more there. I'm optimistic and hopeful, that as I kind of mentioned in my video, that maybe this is a sign Apple's working on bigger things in the smart home and it's coming soon. Hopefully it's not a sign of Apple retreating from the smart home space. Another thing, it's not my favorite thing at WWDC, but I'm very excited about, is the new models running locally. We talked about how I wish that would happen last week on the live stream. And I'm really excited about this whole idea of being able to run AI models locally on your device in apps. And Apple's done a really cool thing with it where like you ask a chatbot something, right? You're sending the chatbot or text, and then you get back text. With this kind of local model, it's, they're doing something more akin to like a real, API where like you can get back data structures you actually that make sense for your app, right? Customized sort of data structures, that aren't just text, which can make it really powerful and maybe add some cool features to apps. I'm sure some developers will be very creative on how they actually implement the new local device models. And then having that same power and shortcuts, I think is really cool, especially that you can also call out to private cloud compute. David Sparks from Mac Sparky and Mac Sparky Labs and Mac Power Users, on the latest Mac Power Users, he and Steven were talking about that he was doing some really cool ideas where he was taking some journal prompts and using his journal entries that he didn't want to necessarily send to an AI chatbot in the cloud. You could send them via shortcuts to private cloud compute and get back some really useful questions based on his journal entries that just helped him, think more about what he was journaling about. And one of the marketing things around these local models, Day One, which is owned by Automatic, the company behind WordPress, they own Day One, very popular journaling app. That is another great example of a company that can use private models, not private cloud compute, but private models, Apple Foundation models running on your device to do some great suggestions around prompts or other things with their app that they would, AI was just simply not an option for an app like that in the past, because unless they shipped their own models and embedded them inside of the app, because they'd be kind of violating their trust with users and their privacy policies if they took users' journal entries and sent them off to some AI in the cloud. It's not what users sign up for by using a product like Day One. So we'll see where all this goes, but I just think there's a lot of room for creativity, and it's kind of not every year, but a lot of years at WWDC, you'll see some cool technology, right? Like widgets, where you're like, there's a really cool thing that I think some developers are really going to take advantage of. And then you get to see what those cool apps and use cases are in the fall when the apps come out, or sometimes, if you get beta invites earlier on. And I think that's going to be local models this year. I think there'll probably be some really cool apps that just use it in creative ways. And then you'll see that, of course, in the fall with new apps coming out or updates to existing apps coming out on the App Store. So, yeah, thank you, William. Got me talking there for a while. Oh yeah, good question, Miguel. Making desktop speakers. Yeah. So are you looking for good options for desktop speakers? I think is where you're going with this. So the ones I have at home, which are, let me see if I can pull this up. Hold on. There's my smart home again. Okay. Safari. There we go. So Kanto, if you see my YouTube videos where I have these speakers behind me on my desk, those are Kanto U4s, YU4s, but Kanto has a bunch of different speakers. I don't even know if they sell the U4s anymore. Mine are a few years old at this point, but they have a bunch of different speakers and are one of those companies that seem to make good speakers for a desk setup, and they can definitely be on the more expensive end, and they usually require some kind of a good DAC or soundboard to convert audio to them. So while they are computer speakers in a way, or some of them are also, some of them, depending on the model, are also more like TV speakers. They can be kind of pricey. So one other option that I would look at is Audio Engine. Not necessarily new, but I've had one of their digital analog converters a while ago and was very impressed with that. And I know of plenty of people who have their speakers and are very pleased with them. So they usually, it's something to keep an eye on depending on when you need speakers. Keep an eye out around Prime Day, because usually these kind of things tend to go on pretty nice sales around Prime Day, which should be coming in July. And they have these A2 Plus. If I my house burned down or whatever, I don't know, I somehow lost my current computer speakers, I would look hard at the A2 Plus and A4s. I think they're pretty good. You could potentially pair them with a subwoofer. But I think they're going to give you really good sound. And the advantage over something like the Kantos, and I'm kind of generalizing here, there's probably models from Kanto that would actually fit better. But some of these ones from Audio Engine direct connect to your computer with USB. So maybe it's not the A2 Plus. Where's the... Anyways, that speaker stands. Anyways, I am not getting to the right speakers that I want to, but Audio Engine does have some speakers that attach your computer with USB. And the advantage of attaching your computer with USB for any speakers is that then the speakers are doing the audio converting, which can tend to sound better than whatever else you have inside of your computer. Now, MacBook Pros over the years tend to have pretty good DACs. So, it depends. But yeah, just something to consider. I mean, and the space changes so much. And as you're saying, like, I'm having trouble finding the speakers that I remember them making. In the past, because I know, like you're saying, a lot of companies have gone to sort of home speakers, multimedia speakers, and TV audio systems, and kind of left the computer speaker setup in the dust. The other side of computer speakers you might consider as well is sort of the whole realm around studio monitors. And there's a lot of need in like creative professions, like video editing, audio, all kinds of audio production stuff, to have good speakers that are like a balanced version of what you hear. And that's a whole other topic of research and stuff. But could be another avenue to go down potentially, depending on the size. Those are generally a little bit larger in physical size, but if you have the space, they could also sound really good. I've also done Sonos speakers as speakers if my intention is just to listen to music, and then I just use the built-in speakers of my computer or whatever else for like video calls, stuff like that. And that can also work out really well. And it can be nice to do some automations there, right? Where it's like certain times a day, you just have music playing in your office. You just come in and there's music playing. It kind of sets your focus and mode into like, okay, I'm in this place where I hear this music. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to focus in my work. That could be nice, depending on how you have it set up. And that kind of stuff is easier with something like Sonos. But then you're going to lose out on the connection to your computer. Now, you can technically connect your computer to Sonos speakers with a little adapter, but there's definitely a latency there. I wouldn't use it for something like games or even watching video on your computer. So lots of layers there. The Audio Engine A2, I think if they still make those connected to USB, that could be a good option. Oh, I haven't really tried any of that stuff. I know Reed from Smart Home Solver has done a bunch of stuff where he had a video last year or something where he did a bunch of those automations with Home Assistant and Apple TV, where launching certain apps on Apple TV triggered different automations in his living room. Kind of a cool idea, but I haven't played with a lot of that myself. It's just been something I've wanted to do, but just haven't had time for. Maybe it's I'm kind of doing more of these big project videos, right, where I take on a bunch of stuff and kind of make it into a little story on my channel. So maybe that'll become a future project video where I do a bunch of that and build out some cool setup with Home Assistant and HomePods and Apple TV. But generally speaking, right now, my Home Assistant use is just to kind of bridge certain devices into Apple Home. Either devices that wouldn't work at all in Apple Home or devices that tend to give me trouble in Apple Home but work better in Home Assistant. Like I've had better luck with some of Govi's devices, just using them in Home Assistant and then putting them into Apple Home that way rather than using Matter. So, thank you, Mill. Appreciate that. Yeah, so wow, quite a week. As I said, I replaced my microwave with of course, everything now has a smart app, right? This is like the low-end microwave from LG, but like there's like a whole smart component to it, which the only thing I see about it is like it does diagnostics, and then it'll also pair if you get the range that matches. It'll like automatically turn on the light if you do some or certain other like the vent or things if you're doing stuff with the range where it's relevant to have the light or the vent on in the microwave. But another like smart home story from this week from me that I think shows a kind of a handy feature of Ubiquiti Unify that if memory serves, I think you can also do this in Eero's app, but it's just something to keep an eye out for with your own network system. So my wife was complaining to me that when she was in the dining room working on her iPad a lot, the Wi-Fi was dropping and not working. And that's like the first time I've heard about Wi-Fi issues from that are like just computer accessing the internet issues in a long time. And I was looking into it and looking, Ubiquiti gives you all kinds of diagnostic tools in their network app. And I noticed that the Ethernet cable connecting the access point in the dining room was running on fast Ethernet, FE, not gigabit Ethernet. And it's a Wi-Fi 6 access point that should have gigabit Ethernet. And so maybe this was a software issue with the access point itself or something like, or the switch somehow just needing to be restart to move to fast Ethernet. But I tried swapping out the Ethernet cable and that fixed it. And then it's on gigabit Ethernet, and then the problem is solved. And I was able to get to that, like figuring out that it was probably the Ethernet cable that I just mistakenly put on one that like had some issues with the wiring or something over time. It gotten pulled or something, one of the connectors. Something about the cable I think was messed up. And so I changed out the cable and now everything's working fine. So just nice to have those tools in your Wi-Fi app to be able to zero in on potential like bottlenecks in the speed of your connection. Again, maybe this was actually a software thing with the router or the access point that just needed to be restarted. But either way, it fixed it. I'm pretty confident that it was in fact the cable. And just kind of nice a story with a happy ending. Are there any new smart devices you're testing that haven't been released yet? Yeah, I can. There's always stuff I can't talk about, but I think different years have their like highs and lows, right? Of like times a year when there's like a lot of stuff coming out and times a year when there's not a lot of stuff coming out. And I think, I don't think the rest of the summer is going to be like the busiest time ever, right? Like there maybe have been other times where more products have come out, but there's a lot of exciting things coming this summer some of which that I know about that I'm excited to talk about, and other which that I don't know about, but I'm guessing will come sometime this summer. So it's like, it's going to be a summer with a lot of fun products, and that's always exciting. And I don't really want to say too much about like particular categories of products, but just like stay tuned, because I think it's going to be a fun summer. Compared to a lot of summers that could be quiet and like have no products, right? Like that's what I'm comparing it to. So, and I'm sure the fall will be exciting too. And actually related to this question, another thing that I can confirm now, is that I will in fact be going out to IFA in Berlin in September. So, Ecovacs is doing a press event there, as you know, they're there every year, I think, for the conference. And so I'm getting flown out by them. They're taking care of a couple nights in my hotel around the event, but then I'm also going to be staying there a little bit longer to cover IFA for you guys. But thanks to Ecovacs making the flight and the trip possible, I'm able to talk about it more. So I'll be covering IFA this fall over in Berlin, which will be fun. It's kind of... There's, of course, CES in January in Las Vegas, and that's a big show for the smart home tech world, and also Apple accessories in general. But IFA is also really big, and more kind of in the fall, pre-holiday. Similar idea though, where companies come and show off stuff. Like last year at IFA was the first time we saw Akara's G5 camera. They showed it off there, and then of course they showed it off at CES before then it released. And so, I wouldn't be surprised. Akara showed a lot of stuff off at CES. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those devices that we saw at CES, you might also see more information about them and maybe more specific release dates coming out of IFA. We'll see. I also think right now, without making this without getting into topics I don't want to discuss on my channel, I guess, there are, it's a really tricky time, I think, right now for a lot of supply chains. And so there's a lot of just uncertainty around when things would be possible and at what cost. And so I think there's that side of it too, that just like, I know there's been smart home products that were supposed to come out by this point, but have not. And this is not specific to any specific company. This is not about Aqara. This is about like, just generally speaking, other companies, products that haven't launched yet because of cost constraints or, logistical issues. And I'm sure that's not really news to anyone, right? That's just like, that's part of the reality of the world we live in right now, and for better or for worse. And so that's another thing that I think plays into everything this year, is that we might not be seeing all the stuff that we usually would have if other things hadn't happened. So, oh, cool. You're going to IFA too. Yeah, we'll see you there. Apple kit, Pomade kit. So, yeah, I'm really excited. It's been a while since I've been over to Europe, and so it'll be good. Yes. Let's see. All right, we've been going almost an hour now. Covered a lot of the news. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the stream, go read the Apple in China book. It's very good. Highly recommend it. Also a great audiobook if you have, maybe that's more your speed or more your thing than the physical book. But yeah, either way, just really great stories about Apple. If you're into Apple and following Apple, things you probably never heard at all, ever reported before, are in this book. And it's fascinating, fascinating stuff. And I think John Gruber said it was like, it's one of the best technology books ever written. And I definitely feel like it's up there. It's very good, well worth your time to go through. So Apple in China by Patrick McGee. Go check it out. In the meantime, thanks so much for tuning in. I usually like to leave you guys with a video to go watch on YouTube, but I don't have one this week because I haven't watched a lot of YouTube other than just WWDC stuff. That actually, no, I do have a video. I'm going to give you this one. Whoops. No, this is not what I want. No, how did I do that? Wow. I typed in YouTube and it went to a previous video. Great video by Stephen Robles, but not the one I wanted to talk about. Here is the full interview of Apple execs with Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal. So this is a interesting interview that I saw earlier on YouTube. So it's not letting me paste. What is going on? Oh, cool. You'll be at Media Days. Yes, I will be too. Yep. I'll see you there. Cool. It's not letting me post this. Okay. I give up. Go check out the Wall Street Journal interview on YouTube with Apple execs with Joanna Stern. Anyways, until next time, thanks for tuning in. Bye.